Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kirishanu b'mitzvotav, v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah, la'asok b'divrei Torah, la'asok b'divrei Torah, la'asok b'divrei Torah, la'asok b'divrei Torah. Okay, we are getting close to the end of the series. It's okay, we'll keep doing Monday night class. It'll still be Monday Night Judaism. It'll just be a different topic. We may do meditation and mysticism for a few weeks. We may do Jewish ethics for a few weeks. Different things. Okay, so how many of you have been practicing meditation that we did?
I've tried a little bit.
Okay.
I missed last week.
Pretty good.
You know how you get to Carnegie Hall. Practice, practice, practice. It becomes easy and better.
But you meditate all the time.
So I do want to
Yeah.
just sort of, you have in front of you a handout. So often you will see, not often, but if you go into certain communities, you'll see a diagram or it's part of a piece of art, this. And what it actually is three, just make sure, three, yeah. What this is different permutations of God's holy name, Yud, He, Vav, and He. You might be lost in this part, but don't worry about it. We can spend time. Of God's holy name, and with different vowel combinations that correspond to the different sefirot that we had on the body that we were discussing the last 2 weeks. Okay, both above the body and in the body. Now we talked about 10 sefirot, and if you look, we have 3, and then 3, and then 3 and 1. So we have 10. But what's all this? So these things in the middle have to do with the eyes and with the nose and with the ears and the mouth. So it's even more detailed. We're not going to do that at all today. We're just going to do the top 3, and then 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. It is not, I don't know why they do this chart this way, because it's a little, it's not clear. So what I'm going to ask you to do is if you have a pen, do we have pens? Let's get some pens. Just so you understand what we're doing right now. You'll take this on. So, oh, thank you. Thank you. I'm going to forget something. Let's make sure we do this. Thank you. Could you toss one of those, please, sir? Oh, thank you. She got me one. Okay. So the order of these is almost correct. The center one right here, I write the names. The center right one right here, where it says Keter in Hebrew, is the first. And then we're going to go to 2 and 3. And then we're going to come down here to 4 and 5 and 6. And then here we're going to come to 7 and 8 and 9 and 10. Okay, so let me show this to you now that I've marked myself. So 1, it's very weird doing this backwards, inside out. 1, 2, 3, and we're going to come down here and go 4, 5, 6. And then on the bottom one, we're going to go 7, 8, 9, 10. So again, the order is, the first one is Keter, which is the middle of the top line. Number 2 is the far right on the top line. Number 3 is the far left on the top line. And we're skipping all of this stuff about the face. Okay. And then we're going to come down here, and number 4 is the far right on far right here. Facet. Does it say it in English? Oh, good. It says it in. Why did some they put in English and some they put in only in Hebrew? Okay. So 4 is Chesed, 5 is Gevura, 6 is Tiferet, 7 is Netzach, 8 is Hod, 9 is Yesod, and 10 is Malchut. Okay. And then they correspond, right, to parts of the body. 1, 2, 3 are outside of the body. Then 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. So it actually comes down like this, like a lightning bolt. Okay, that's kind of how it comes down in terms of our body. Okay, so again, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. I know I'm going to lose some of you. That's okay. You can keep watching the video, and it's okay because I'm going to walk you through it when we do it once anyhow. Okay? Did we pass? Where's my little guy that I was writing notes on? Can you pass that over here, please? Okay. If you look at this top line, the one in the middle, it's called Keter. It's the first one. The one on the right is called Chokmah. Second, and the one on the left is called Bina, okay, which mean crown and wisdom and understanding. Okay, and this kind of explains to you, only it's not the entire thing, is it? This is the wrong side of the page. Okay. Is there another side that? It probably is, but that's okay. So now, first of all, you guys are going to be able to walk into an Orthodox shul in Jerusalem and see this, and now you're going to know what they're talking, what it's about, right? This is the 21st Yahud. This is, I forget if this is attributed to Cordovero or Abulafia in the Middle Ages, but one of the great Kabbalists. And the idea is that the Yud, Hey, Vav, and Hey are silent letters, and yet they're all pronounceable letters, right? Yud could be silent, Ya or Ja. Hey could be silent or Ha. Vav could be silent or Va or Da or Wa or O or U. And Hey could be silent or Ha. Okay? All depends what they're around. Well, E can be silent, or it can have a sound. And it can have a short E or a long E. It's not that, right? It's not that different. You know that if you see C-A-M-E, it's not Kama. It's came, and it makes the A long sound. So it's not that different in some ways. Okay. And we go through 10 basic vowel systems. I'm sorry, this is the tough part. That next part, we're only going to do this for a few minutes. The next part. Be easier. We go through 10 different vowel systems, and they correspond to these 10 energy centers, and they correspond to our body as well. So when we're focusing on a certain sound, we're focusing on where that place is as we make the sound. Whom have I lost? I haven't lost anyone yet?
So far, you're okay.
So far, I'm okay. Just throw something at me when I get okay. So, actually, let's put this. So, this is pronouncing it all out. All right. And we're going to do it first. We're only going to do this once or twice. We're going to do it with the actual vowel sounds as one word, with Yaha, Waha. And then we're going to take it another time and do it in a lengthy way with just Ya, and then a hail, and Ha, inhale, and Wah, inhale, Ha. Okay? I'm going to walk you through it. We'll do it with our eyes open first. Okay? How many of you read Hebrew vowels? This will be easier for you than other people. Okay? So, we focus on number 1, which is called Keter. First of all, for a moment, sit up, take off our watch. After all that demonstration, boom, the watches are still on. So, we're going to start. Just allow yourself to be breathed. We can do this with our eyes open. Don't breathe. Instead, be breathed. Instead of inhaling, you view yourself as being breathed into by God blowing into you. You're not exhaling, but rather God is taking the breath from us. And if you were practicing your triangle breathing, you can do that. So the first one is going to be focused above the top of our head. We put a yarmulke, a soft spot of a baby's head, but just above that, outside in the ethers. And we're going to do the yaha waha with the vowel all. Okay, so we're going to try that together. Ready? Yo. Now we're going to focus outside of above us, right here on the right side. with ah. Yahweh. Over here, the left side with a. Yahweh. So in our right part of our chest with e. Yahweh. And left part of the chest is almost silent, just Yahweh. And our solar plexus with O. Our right hip with E. Our left hip with U. Our genitalia region with Wu. The last one, just breathe, and I'll explain it to you in a moment. I'll give you just a structural idea. If you look at the bottom one, you see we have this letter Yud, this letter Hey, and this letter Vav, and this letter Hey, but inside the Hey, there's a word. And the word spells Adonai. Okay? And that's the meditation we would be doing, is that vowel system combined with all of the vowel systems. So you would do all of it together with Yah, Hey, you. Don't worry about that for right now, because you guys haven't been practicing your triangle breathing. But just breathe God's name. Okay? We're going to do it again, this time with your eyes closed. Now, I'll talk you through it. This is called the 21st Yehud. It is extremely, extremely, extremely powerful. And the significance of the psalm, I have placed the Yud He Vav He before me at all times. It is the form of God. It is the form of our body. And it is the key to opening up every energy center of healing physically, mentally, spiritually, emotionally, in every way. So we're going to do it first slowly, just with all the letters, and then we're going to take a couple minutes and do it with each letter. Okay? Straight. Close your eyes. The first one at the top above your head with all. The right side with awe. Left side with A. On the right chest with on the left chest with our solar plexus with O. Our right hip with E. On our left hip with U. And our Yesod with Wu. The last one below our feet, just God's name, their whole being, and just breathing it out. So how do you feel as you open your eyes? How do you feel right now? Any difference?
I feel very relaxed.
Yeah.
I feel relaxed.
Where you want to take a longer time. Find yourself as we went through it, wanting to stretch it out more and more. Okay? Is to get lost in God's name, which is ourselves and our souls. And more. When we do that, we can listen and listen to what God says, because God doesn't shout, God whispers. So we can be still and listen. So we're going to do one more time, because this is not a class in meditation per se. It's just because we've been doing the last couple of weeks a little bit of exercises. I wanted to just get an idea of meditation, a deeper meditation. Doesn't mean it takes you to a deeper place than just triangle breathing, but it does mean that it gives you a different tone, different take, and that the power of the meditation itself can take you to a deeper place easier. Does that make sense to everybody? So this time we're going to take a full breath for every letter. Okay? So we're going to close your eyes, and this time so it's going to be one breath of yaw, and then haw, and then wah, and then haw. Okay? Inhale from your stomach, and fill up your chest with the lower parts of the lungs first. It's above our head, and it's awe. I'll speed it up a little bit so you don't have to hold the same length of time that I do. Okay. Awe on the right side, outside our head. Outside the left side of the head with A, long A. The right chest with E. Left chest with Solar plexus with O. Yo. Right hip with E. Left hip with U. Sewed with woo. Yo. I'm going to do 4 breaths with thinking of God's name as I do Shem itself. You. Jag heter when who you. Jag heter who you. Jag heter who you. Open your eyes. How bright is everything? Look at smiles. That's a good sign. Tell me what you feel.
Sleepy.
I was gonna say it's
What
a
else?
good time.
What else? What do you guys feel? You're both smiling. Got big grins on your faces.
Yeah, it was a different experience. Like I've not ever done this before. So yeah, it's a different experience, sort of like a wonderful mantra, God's name. What better mantra can there be?
Exactly, with different vowels. As difficult as this may be for you, that was that difficult for me because I was doing it 10 times the speed I normally do it at. Because I typically will spend 20, 30, 40 seconds on each letter.
Do you do that every day?
Not anymore. I would like to say that I do it every day, but that would be a lie. I do it some days. I used to. I spent years doing it every day.
Mm-hmm.
Now I have twins.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know how you get everything into your day.
Because of meditation. That's why. That's literally why. It is very, very, very powerful. And you will stretch it out longer and longer for your own breath length. And it's very, very powerful to do. It is, when we say we're in the image of God, it's truly making the image of God. Okay, within ourselves and vocalizing it. And everyone has a different note, right? Whatever your loose throat note is, that's the note. If you listen to it, right, it sounds like 2 other things. Tibetan chants, Tibetan monks, and didgeridoos. Listen, right? Right? It has that sound, but okay, because just relax. Here's another thing whenever you're doing any breathing or meditating. Okay. The vast majority of the time, there's exceptions to this that's called mouth breathing for purpose. You want to inhale through your nose and exhale through your mouth. The other thing is that you want to, as you're inhaling, touch the tip of your tongue to that where your front teeth touch the gums in the back, just like you're doing that. You want to just touch the tip. Why? Because if we look at it, okay, what's the rule about me when I get a pen in my hand and I'm going towards the board? Okay, no laughing, right? No laughing. This is going to be embarrassing. So if we look at a face,
That's pretty good piece.
this guy was young. Let's give him a little mustache too. In fact, let's give him a little bit. Okay, no, I don't know. That's going to go my way. It's getting carried away. Okay, so if we look in the mouth, right? If you're inhaling through the nose and exhaling through the mouth, you're creating a circuit. But the circuit has a breaker in it, which if you, this is going to be really hard to do. So if the mouth kind of looks like this, okay, that gave him a fat lip. If the mouth, Dan Adams, stop laughing. If the mouth looks like this, right, that's the mouth, and the teeth are here, right? If the tongue is touching right up there, it means it's closing. See, those are teeth. It's closing the circuit. So it's actually going through you all and coming out as you come out. Does that make sense to everyone, just from an electrical point of view?
So your tongue being up there closes the circuit so it
Correct.
goes through your whole body?
So as you inhale, when you meditate, you want to have your tongue touching the top of where your front teeth meet the gums. So your tongue is curled and touching up there. Okay, as you inhale, and then you're exhaling through your mouth. Always filling the bottom part. That wasn't the worst drawing I've ever done here, wasn't it? Now he looks Egyptian. Okay. Wait, now he's got a ponytail. All right, so you does that follow for everybody? Okay, it's up to you. This is as powerful as you're willing to make it. Triangle breathing is as powerful as you're willing to make it. This is a very, very powerful Kabbalistic meditation. Okay, that's why when you walk into certain places, next time you're in an Orthodox shul, we actually have, where's that? Is it up in storage, that thing we have to get framed that has this on it?
Yes, I think it's up.
It's up there. We can't get it, can we? Is it possible? I'll show you. I have to get it framed because I bought it at a garage sale, so obviously I had no idea what they were talking about. So bought it at a garage sale for $5, but we should reframe it. And yeah, I'll stay seated. I'm gonna sit. And do whatever you tell me. I'm gonna sit. So, because we're gonna move to something else now. So, it's as powerful as you choose to make it, but it is extremely powerful. I'm just telling you that from experience. And like anything, when you're doing it and doing it regularly, then you will find how powerful it is. Because remember, it goes back to that image. I don't want to get up because if I get up, he'll hit me. It goes back to that image of the human being, right? Right? God's image is a human being. When we take God's letters and put them vertically. And when you're doing this, you're up here and bringing it all the way through your whole being with every vowel permutation. If you look at this, you also have a permutations of the vowels to think of and contemplate on and use when you are doing the details of your face. But that's really getting do this for a couple of years first without the face. Okay, see where that takes you. So it's very, very powerful. And we'll go more. Is that how many find this interesting? This kind of doing deep. I mean, it's how many of you noticed that now, when you first opened your eyes, the tablecloth was a little whiter than it is now. Yeah. Thank you. So we have to get this framed. But when you see something like this here, when you see something like this, have you ever seen anything like this?
No.
You ever been okay? So you might see this in a Sephardic or an Orthodox temple, and this is what there are alternate names and permutations and different designs, and people have made art of these kind of meditations. But these are all Sephardic or Kabbalistic meditations. This is actually a map for different meditations.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
It's everything.
You can read that.
No, I cannot. Without my glasses, I definitely can't read the little things. But that gives you an idea of. You may see this, and if you see this, you go to a Sephardic temple. Now, here's what happened. As we talked about last week, the Ashkenazi, because of Shabbatai Zvi, prohibited Jewish mystical teachings, prohibited Lurianic Kabbalah or any form of Jewish mysticism, because, as we talked about, Shabbatai Zvi almost destroyed all of Judaism. That didn't happen in the Sephardic world. So if you go into a Sephardic temple, if you open up a Sephardic prayer book, you will often see, like the bottom name here, the Yud Hey Vav Hey, and then there's a word underneath the bottom Hey. Do you guys see that? You want to see that? If you open a traditional Sephardic prayer book, you will actually. You will actually see God's name, and it'll look like this in the prayer book. So it will look like this. Yud, Hey, Vav, and a really long Hey with something underneath. And that's what you're supposed to be meditating on when you're saying that one of God's name. And it's right there in the Sephardic prayer book. Okay? It's not like hidden. It's right there. They didn't hide it away. So it's a deep part of our tradition that goes back a very, very long time. And is lost in all too many places, unless, again, you're hanging out with real observant Breslov Hasidim or Satmar Hasidim or something like that. And it's really very in-depth. Or a real ultra-Orthodox Sephardic community. Like if you walked into Kahal Yosef, which is a wonderful synagogue in Beverly Hills on Santa Monica Boulevard by Beverly Glen. Has anyone ever been there? It's called Kahal Yosef. It's an Iraqi synagogue. I used to teach meditation there, Jewish meditation and mysticism there a long time ago. I had dark hair then. And you'll see things like this at different places in the study room or the sanctuary. I don't know if it's in the sanctuary, but certainly different places in the foyer or the study room. And it's so that they're meditations. That's what it's there for. We are a meditative tradition. And that we place into action. So let's talk about action, because that's where we are. We finished last week with, by the way, how long, without looking at the clock, how long, everybody watches, how long do you think that took us, that little breathing, working on this?
30 minutes.
Just about, yeah. The breathing, it slows everything, changes things. But now, so for me, when I first opened my eyes after even doing a short version, everything's brighter.
It was.
And now everything's back to the colors a little bit dimmer than they were. Anyone else like that?
Yeah.
So now here's the key to remember. And I've taught this to athletes around the world, and to NCAA athletes and professional athletes. And it's true for business, it's true for everything. Would it be fair to say your perception, your color perception when you first opened your eyes was 10% greater than it is right now? Is that a fair statement? Okay, it might be a lot more, might be a little less, might be okay.
Everything was brighter.
Okay, so if it was 10% brighter.
Seemed brighter to me too, yeah.
Okay, so if we say 10%, and it may have been much more than that, but let's say we say just 10%. 10% is the difference between a guy hitting in baseball, between a guy hitting 300 and hitting 330. It's between a pitcher pitching a ball at 90 miles an hour or 100 miles an hour. It's the difference between a golfer hitting an 80 and hitting 72, which is par. The smallest difference actually is huge. The smallest difference in our change of perception is huge in terms of how it affects our performance. Do you guys see that? So if you can more and more, so you're seeing the brighter colors, so everything becomes larger and larger, you start to understand that also changes, instead of only perceiving this much of the universe, that much, or that much. Over years, that much. That's the power of doing it. And we all as Jews and as human beings have the same transcendental meditation mantra, right? I think in TM they used to give you, say, okay, this is your mantra. This is you meditate going whatever, and you meditate saying this, and you meditate saying that. But we all have this because we're all made in God's image. So this is actually good for all of us. Opens up everything. It's not a dead zone. Okay? So let's talk about action with that. We talked about the acidic world, and remember, we're bouncing around from time tables now. We talked about the formation of the movements. Remember, everyone was observant, or not observant, but everyone was Jewish, and then the reformers who called everyone else observant. And then you have these guys who said we're not as observant as those guys, so it's the Orthodox, but more conservative than reformers. So you have the three movements. Again, in the 50s, you had a movement come up called Reconstructionism. I cannot speak about it because I don't understand it. Okay, I'm just being honest. Intellectually, it's one of those things it doesn't make sense to me. And when someone tried to explain it to me saying, look, forget all theology of Mordecai Kaplan, it's just Judaism by vote, that really makes no sense to me. Okay, so I don't quite get it. And then renewal Judaism, which in the 70s we talked about, was really that movement started because of Rabbi Shlomo Krobach, blessed memory, and Rabbi Zalman Schachter Shlomo, blessed memory, both the two amazing men. And they took the wisdom of the ultra-Orthodox and the Hasidic world and brought it to the hippies. And so they made it accessible. So they took, instead of having meditating on a verse, and meditating a verse over and over from the Torah, they would put folk music to it. Okay, Lamana chai v'rei, Lamana chai v'rei, adabrana, shalom. Because of my brothers and friends, because of my sisters and friends, please let me ask, please let me sing, peace to you. And they did those kind of things, and out of that came Debbie Friedman. The whole camping movements were part of that Jewish camp. And who went to a Jewish camp? I'm the only one. You guys went to a Jewish camp? Where'd you go?
It was out of the West Jewish Community Centers in North Hollywood. I don't remember the name of the camp.
Okay.
I went to Camp Machane Kabbalah in Ottawa. It's back a long way.
Camp's great. Camp was a great thing. Camps used to be. We knew that the two things that kept Jews in Judaism were birthright and camps. Camps used to be really a wonderful place for young people to go. I'd like to say I still believe that. Certainly the ones that I know, it's very hard for me to believe because they've ended up having other agendas and that I have problems with. And you're kosher, you're not kosher. It's not kosher style. There's a boys' cabin and a girls' cabin.
Yeah, not anymore.
And just because, I'm sorry, I have a problem when you're starting to talk 7 and 8 year olds and saying, okay, he feels like a girl, so we're putting an 8-year-old boy with 8-year-old girls' cabins. I don't think it's
Are they
safe.
doing that?
Yeah.
In the Jewish camps? Wow.
Yeah, some of them, yeah. And I grew up at Jewish camps. When I was a camper, counselor, waterfront, was the camp rabbi. I loved Jewish camps, and then backed away when it started becoming. And a lot of the reasons they did that was because of fear of lawsuits. So that's what's going on in the movements. In terms of style, you have the Ashkenazi and the Sephardi, right? We talked about that. And then a subsect of the Sephardi, the Mizrahi, the Persian, Iraqi, Iranian. Sephardi, Spain, Portugal, France, Italy. The Ashkenazi, Eastern Europe. Most of the people who came to this country were Jews they came in the early 20th century, and from escaping the Russian pogroms, etc. They all are, the vast majority of them are Ashkenazi, which is why you end up getting this Ashkenazi stuff. Okay. But let's remember, we've talked about that the world reflects Judaism and Judaism reflects the world. So what starts happening in the 1800s is you start getting a nationalistic movement. Everyone wants their own home country, right? America got freedom. France got freedom. We should all have, we should no longer be part of Russia. We should be Polish. We should, or whatever the appropriate. Everyone wants their own nation. So that's going to get reflected in us. And that's what I want to talk about tonight. So it's called Zionism. Zionism, Zion is one of the names for Israel. And since the temple was destroyed in 70 of the Common Era, we've always said we will go back. We've always prayed in our daily prayer services, we will go back. The temple will be rebuilt, Messiah will come, etc. Always prayed we'll go back. So much so that Napoleon apparently was walking by a temple as they were chanting something, and he asked one of his colonels who was Jewish, what are they doing? And he said, they're praying to return back to Israel. He said, for 1,800 years, they're still praying to go back to Israel. I have no doubt they will eventually do it. But because the political world is now shaping itself to be nationalistic, everyone wants their own country. And at the same time, you have some horrible anti-Semitism going on in institutionalized anti-Semitism in Eastern Europe, specifically Russia and Poland, specifically Russia, with pogroms. Now, pogroms were, how many saw Fiddler on the Roof?
Oh, yeah.
Right? And the Cossacks say, Tevi, I'm sorry, we're going to have to come. I'm sorry, we got to do this, but we've been ordered to come do this. And so the pogroms were institutionalized attacks on Jewish communities, often leading to death, destruction, rape, whatever else. Okay. And when we talked about roots of anti-Semitism, that there's a history, not only theologically and politically, but there's a history that the peasants didn't like the Jews because the successful Jews were collecting the money for the royalty, because the royalty didn't know how to do math, right? They hired the Jew. They didn't trust the Jew. The Jew was hired, was collecting. The peasants didn't trust the Jew. So this is all an excuse to let's let out all right. So a bunch of Tevias are getting pretty tired of this at the same time as there's this nationalistic movement. We should have our own nation. And you get a man named Theodor Herzl, born in 1860, dies in 1904. Herzl is a brilliant man, a brilliant writer, brilliant speaker. And he starts pushing what becomes known as modern Zionism. We need a state of Israel, a homeland for the Jewish people. And he writes some papers, The Jewish State in 1896. It's a very big paper. He starts a newspaper, I'm forgetting the name of it, in 1897, I think, in Vienna. And he's, connected with different people. And he's just a good fundraiser. Okay, he's one of those guys who could go raise money for whatever group, right? He'd be a great business. And he's doing this. And he creates the first Zionist Congress in 1897. It happens in Switzerland. And it's a political Congress of we need to get our own homeland. Right? Jews from all over the world come to say, okay, the Belgians want their homeland, the Basques want their homeland, we want our homeland. Okay? And so he becomes the founder of modern political Zionism. At the same time, you have a very special man named Ahad Ha'am, who is from 1856 to 1927, who really becomes the leader of the cultural aspect of Zionism. Poetry, literature, Jewish newspapers, not in Yiddish, but in Hebrew. It's also because of him that modern Hebrew in the state of Israel is pronounced in Sephardic pronunciations and not Ashkenazi. Okay? So it's not Baruch Hu es Adonai HaMevorach, it's Baruch Hu et Adonai HaMevorach. Okay? Baruch Hu es was Ashkenazi, Baruch Hu et was Sephardic. Israel adopted the Sephardic pronunciations mainly because of Ahad Ha'am. Okay?
I don't change these.
No, I had read, and I don't know if it's the same person, that when Israel when they were kind of trying to figure out like the common language, that people wanted different languages, and he kind of, I don't know if this is the guy.
It probably was.
He was ridiculed by people and his whole family, but they wanted Hebrew to be the language.
Well, he pushed for that.
Yeah.
It may have been him they were referring to or
I
not.
just remember that.
I don't know if his family was persecuted. I don't know enough about him, but he really pushed. So now when we teach a child to read, it's Baruch Hu et Adonai HaMevorach, not Baruch es Adonai HaMevorach. Okay, so it's that's what we accepted now. So that became the pronunciations again because of Ahad Ha'am and pushing Jewish cultural identity in as our own form of Zionism as well, because he realized it's not just about politics, it's also about culture. Okay. And in 1901, the Jewish National Fund is started. It is to buy land in Israel. So where are your Jews? You got Jews in Russia, Pale Settlement. You got Jews in England. You got Jews in Palestine. There's some Jews there. You got Jews in America. These are big Jewish areas, right? And so we're going to get the people. Many of the people are going to come from a country where they're unhappy. So they're going to come from Russia, from the Pale Settlement, a lot of the early settlers, right? American Jews may not be so interested, but they're going to raise money because they realize it's something that should be done. English Jews, interested politically, especially since it's an English protectorate, and they're also interested in, moving on, but they're not necessarily, do they want to move to Israel? Moreover, who are the people who are going to move to Palestine before it becomes Israel and be pioneers and start a kibbutz, a communal farm? Who are those people going to be? It's not going to be me. Well, not now. It might be. I don't know. They won't know that. But the point is, depending on bad is, I guess. But it's going to be the young men shall dream dreams, the old men shall have visions. Right? It's going to be the dreamers. It's going to be the 20-year-olds with all of the passion and joy and koach, strength to do it. Right? I'm not going out and doing farm laboring and fielding 14 hours a day. It's not a legitimate choice. Okay? And so the Jewish National Fund starts to purchase land for Jews in Palestine. Okay, and help people come over. So now you've got a culture that's starting to develop back in Israel. You've got people wanting to emigrate out of their countries, some to Israel. You've got people from the different countries and raising money. All this is going on all at the same time. At the same time, what's going on in the world? What happens in the late 19th and early 20th century? Socialism. Right?
Mhm.
You got Marx, and then you got Lenin. The revolution takes place in 1917, I think, if I remember right. 1721, something like that, the Russian Revolution. So you've got all this other world where this idealistic, utopian type of society wanted to be built based on socialism. Because it's a utopian society that doesn't really work per se, especially in a large way, but for a small community. So you know what? I'm going to take care of the accounting, and your daughter's going to take care with my sons of the farming, right? And you're going to take care of making sure that all the tailoring is done properly and all, right? You're going to make sure the buildings are strong that we build, right? Everyone's going to have their own. You're going to teach, all these things, okay? So that world starts happening. And there are Jews with some money and power, most notably the Rothschilds in Europe. And so in 1903, Joseph Chamberlain actually offers, and I don't know his relationship to Neville Chamberlain, so I don't know that they are not related, so I don't want to confuse the two because I actually don't know. Joseph Chamberlain, who was one of the major cultural secretaries in the British Parliament, actually offers Herzl 5,000 square miles of a homeland in Uganda.
Uganda.
I believe, I think Mozambique may have been offered at one point. I mean, in Uganda.
Wow.
And it's like, well, that gives us a homeland, but do we want a homeland in Uganda? Or do we want our homeland that we've had for thousands of years? And the answer was no, we're holding out for our homeland. We're not compromising on this one. Part of it, I think, was also influencing Chad Ha'am had a great statement that he, I think, put up there. Yeah, he did not want he wanted a Jewish state, not merely a state for Jews, but truly a Jewish state. So this is going on, and money's being raised, and some land is being bought, and people are being brought from different parts of the world into Israel. And there's problems there between the Arabs and the Jews and everything else. And there's problems that one of my favorite guys, who I didn't put up, named Jabotinsky, Vladimir Jabotinsky, who I think was just a genius, points out in these early Zionist years, he points out we're going to have a problem. Because here's what happens. Miss Arab over here has owned a farm for the last 200 years in her generation of her family. It is a wasteland. It is useless land. It is a desert or a swamp. Okay? And it's worth 5 cents an acre. And I come up, sponsored by the Jewish National Fund or whichever group, and I say, Miss Arab, we'll give you $1 an acre. 20 times its value. She jumps at it. Okay? It's been paid 20 times the value of the land. Now, 3 of you come in and you're working that land really well. Okay? And your kids are working that land really well. And whether it's in 20 or 40 or 60 or 70 years, that useless land that was basically just camel poop, right, is now this amazing vineyard making award-winning wines, or it's an amazing orchard because the Israeli farmers actually knew one a few years back, one of the original guys, or one of the early pioneers, who they developed how to graft fruits on fruits. You can only graft certain fruits with certain other fruits. I don't know if you know that or not. There's a whole science to grafting.
Mhm.
You can't graft an orange and a fig.
Mhm.
They got to be in the same families, and they started grafting it. Now, 60 years later, first of all, you got your money. You were happy. You lived high on the hog, having been poor your whole life. But now your granddaughter, you spent all the money between you and your kids. Money's gone. Your granddaughter doesn't have any of that money. And she's looking at their land, or their grandkids' land, and saying that land is worth at least $20 an acre. And they stole it. Did they steal it?
Mhm.
They overpaid for it.
Mhm.
And then they made it into something valuable. And now the granddaughter, all she knows is not that, she knows, all she cares about is grandma was hustled by them. They took advantage of grandma. The fact that, in fact, they paid 20 times the value is inconsequential. She doesn't care about that because now it's not only worth $1, it's worth $20 an acre. So she has issues with you and your grandchildren and doesn't care what the history is.
And so it begins.
Well, it begins back to Isaac and Ishmael. Yes, it's so now you have this other hatred going on. Now you guys see how this comes back and saying, well, my great grandparents were there for 300 years, and you're saying that's fabulous, but our ancestors were there for 3,000. Well, we were there for 300, and you Jews, you took advantage of my grandmother. All she wanted was her home that had been in her family for generations, and you stole it from me. Is any of that true? Great line, though, isn't it? Because if I'm an anti-Semitic media person, I can say they bought land that is worth $20 an acre for $1 from the poor, defenseless, ignorant Arab woman. By the way, I hope you enjoy spending all the money at the Ritz. Okay, right? That problem's going to happen too. Jabotinsky predicts that. He predicts that this is going to happen. That's why he was very realistic. It's like, you know what? They're not going to be okay with this in 2 generations. That's why I really appreciate Jabotinsky was not only an idealist, but a realist. He knew this was going to end up in war. Because certain bunch say, I want the land back that you stole from grandma. And so she's going to do everything to make your land valueless so she can get it back, or that you give it to her. And we have the concept of giving land for peace. The problem is a black hole can't be filled. Land for peace only works if both sides want peace. If only one side wants peace,
Yeah.
it's not going to happen. So you have this going on. You start having in the early 20th century fundraisers of people who are not born in Israel, but who maybe from other countries who are getting involved in Zionism. You have this man, his name is Chaim Weizmann. He ultimately becomes the first prime minister of Israel. David Ben-Gurion. You have Weizmann becomes the first president. David Ben-Gurion, the first prime minister. You got this amazing fundraiser. This very, very passionate woman. I think she's from Ohio, if I remember right, originally, named Golda Meir, right? Who apparently was quite the party animal, from what I understand. She was, because let's be honest, okay? You got a bunch of 20-year-olds in a commune called a kibbutz, and they're all single. We'll just leave it at that, okay? Right? And they're doing what 20-year-olds are going to do. Send them all off to camp by themselves to go do farming and live. And you know what? They're going to be 20-year-olds, right? They're going to be 25-year-olds. So you have all of this going on that will happen in the early 20th century. In 1917, you have what's called the Balfour Declaration. I actually want to read it to you, which means I have to find it, which is a very powerful document that at the time there's a war going on, right? And this is an attempt on the English government's, British government during the First World War in 1917. That's saying, you know, we're behind. We have support. We officially support a national homeland for the Jews in Israel. Why are they doing that? They want the Jews fighting for them, right? Because the battle's over. This is, and it's just a letter. It's dated November 2nd, 1917. And it's to Lord Rothschild, because Rothschild pushed for it with Lord Balfour. I have much pleasure in conveying to you, on behalf of His Majesty's government, the following declaration of sympathy with Jewish Zionist aspirations, which has been submitted to and approved by the Cabinet. Quote, His Majesty's government view with favor the establishment in Palestine of a national home for the Jewish people, and will use their best endeavors to facilitate the achievement of this object, it being clearly understood that nothing shall be done which may prejudice the civil and religious rights of existing non-Jewish communities in Palestine, or the rights and political status enjoyed by Jews in any other country. I should be grateful if you would bring this declaration to the knowledge of the Zionist Federation, and it is from a letter from Lord Balfour to the Rothschilds. I was reading his handwriting. I could have read a typed version. It would have been a lot easier. So it is to Lord Arthur Balfour, or from Lord Arthur Balfour. This support now gives the Zionists something to rally around. Come on, we're going to help them win this war, and we're going to have our Jewish homeland. It doesn't happen so easily. But in 1948, after the Holocaust, the world is guilty enough to say, okay, we're going to let this happen after independence wars, fighting, and everything else. And in 1948, only 5 nations voted in support that they will recognize Israel. And they did. And in 1948, we get our first modern state of Israel independence. And within 24 hours, I think it's 22 different countries attack Israel, declare war. Not a war or conflict in Israel between the Jews and the Arabs, between the Israelis and the Arabs, has been initiated by Israel. That is a non-questionable or debatable issue. Not one conflict or war has been initiated by Israel. They have all been initiated in other ways. And even when Israel attacks, it's because there's something else had just happened or was about to happen, so they had to stop the bombs from coming in. We would not say that if you go send soldiers to stop a room that has a bunch of missile projectiles in it to bomb Tel Aviv, they're starting that. You're just stopping it. The Israeli Defense Force says who they are by their name. They're the Israeli Defense Force, period. I believe it's still true. I know it used to be, and I think it still is, that one of the laws in the Israeli Defense Force is if I command you as a soldier to do something and you see a black flag in front of you, in terms of the ethics, not only are you not supposed to do it, you're supposed to report me to my commander. It is a defense force based on ethics. One of the things that's happened in Israel, because we keep getting attacked, 48, we attacked throughout the 50s, 1967 war. Now technology is making it so Israel is becoming smaller and smaller as the world's getting bigger. This time we don't give back everything we take. We unify Judaism, we unify Jerusalem, we keep the Golan Heights, we keep Sinai. And we've always just wanted peace. As Golda Meir said, if the Arabs put down their weapons today, we'd have peace. If we put down our weapons, God forbid, there'd be no Israel tomorrow. And again, it's often peopled by young people, or people with dreams. And it's often peopled in the early 20th century, mid-20th century, with a lot of people who came from backgrounds where they were persecuted. But but they're not necessarily observant Jews. And here's where you get to have a conflict that we are dealing with actively today. Israel is formed as a parliamentary government. Okay, America is not a democracy. America is a republic. Right? Israel is not a democracy. It's a parliamentary system. Okay, that means that you need to bring coalitions of different people together. When Israel is started, it is started by Zionists, who are political Zionists, who are not religiously observant. So you have non-religious Jews fighting to have a Jewish state. And in the early 20th century, you have a man, let's see what his dates of life are, because he really is someone that is not studied about, that should be, in my opinion. You have a man named Rabbi Abraham Isaac Kook. He lives from 1865 to 1935. Rav Kook. Any book by Rav Kook is amazing. His teachings are amazing. He had the intellectual knowledge, the spiritual wisdom, the personal charisma and power to do something that no one has been able to do since. And you can get any of his books; they're really wonderful. Kook goes and he says, "Okay, you got over here. No longer are you grandma and granddaughter.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
That's done. Now you're Orthodox Jews,
Okay.
okay, who have come to the Holy Land to pray. You've moved to Palestine because you want to make a Jewish homeland that is about the spiritual Jewish homeland, the rebuilding Mashiach, etc. You guys came from Russia, influenced by communism, socialism. You're farmers. You're making these kibbutzim. You're creating the government. It's a secular government. God, religion doesn't have a big place in your world. You pray because you're there in the Holy Land. Okay, that's your man of prayer. But Judaism is very cultural for you, not necessarily observant religion. You two don't necessarily like each other, and you have different values, and you judge each other. Oh, they're archaic. They wear those funny outfits. They still keep kosher. They're missing out on shrimp. They're goyim. They're not even Jews, right? Rav Kook has all of these qualities that he is able to do something that we desperately need today as well. Goes to them, he says, look, human beings, we have a body, we have a spirit. If they don't work together, everything falls apart. You are in charge of the spirit of Israel, but if you don't respect the body, we will have no Israel. We need a body and a spirit. If you're just an empty body, you are no different than a robot. You are no different than a slave. You have no purpose. They give us the purpose. So you have a parliamentary system that is established by non-observant Jews for a Jewish state. Do you guys see the challenges that is going to manifest over time, no matter how you look at it? And as time goes on, you have, because it's a parliamentary system, and you're the head of one party and you're the head of another party, right? And you guys are tied about which party is going to control things. What happens in any coalition parliamentary system? All of a sudden, you guys are really important, aren't you? So you're going to offer them almost anything to be on your side, and you're going to offer them almost anything. So and if you offer it and you don't deliver, guess where they're going to go? And you're out. So the concept of a coalition and parliamentarian system is, by definition, in many ways, a difficult one to manifest and keep going in a great way. It does work if it's the times of the Sanhedrin. Does work in the times of the Talmud, where everyone respects everyone and no one's looking for personal power. No one's looking for all those other things. They're only looking to do the best for the nation. So it does work in the early days of Israel because they're all on the same page. But over time, and as anti-Semitism increases and other things in the world, or increases again in the world, those coalitions start becoming problematic. And now you understand why Israel politics is so complicated today. And I have a very strong belief we all could move to Israel tomorrow. Make aliyah, that's what the word is. Aliyah means to go up, to ascend. Could all go to Israel tomorrow, become citizens, live there, and influence Israeli politics. And yet we're not. As far as I'm concerned, I got no right to tell them how they should do their politics. Because if I wanted, I could influence them. I don't have the right to go over there. So when I hear rabbis, excuse my language, really pissed me off a couple of weeks ago. When a bunch of rabbis sent a large congregation in the United States send a letter to Knesset that if you're supporting this coalition with Netanyahu, none of you are invited and can come speak at our temple. Okay? Who the heck are you to say you want to influence Israeli politics, Mr. Rabbi of whatever large temple? Get your butt over there and move there. You're welcome. And then you can get involved. But who are you if you're staying in the safety of the diaspora in America, in your nice congregation in Beverly Hills or wherever, to make that kind of comment? Our job as diaspora Jews is to support Israel, not to question it. Even when they do something wrong, we may within ourselves say, I think they need to do something a little different, but you don't tell them what to do. You sure as heck don't air that laundry in the world, because it becomes another excuse for anti-Semitism. I don't care what Israel does. I will never badmouth Israel publicly. I don't care what they do. Because as soon as I do, someone will say exactly what they've said about these rabbis. See, look, even the rabbis think Israel's wrong. And we don't need that in the world.
I actually know Christians who support Israel more than some Jews.
Much more. This great organization called KUFI, Christians United for Israel. So that's going on in the Israeli world, in the Israel world. And Israel is the first line of defense for all Jews everywhere. Let's remember that too. Forget about the theology. It is the first line of defense. It's our little homeland. And it is little. This is pre-1967 war. Moshe Dayan had a very famous statement. I could light a cigarette on one border of Israel and go to the opposite border, and my cigarette would still be lit.
Wow.
Because from east to west, that's how thin it was. So it is so important that we always support Israel in every way. Here's the other reason. I'll give you two other reasons. One that was said to me by Marco Rubio, who said, when I asked him about this at a luncheon, and he said, I don't care what Israel does when you support Israel. And you know I like Rubio. And he said, and the reason is very simple. The whole world knows Israel and America are very tight allies. And the moment we turn our back on Israel, all of our other allies will say, when are they going to turn their back on us? And they will go to other superpowers, which we've seen in the last couple of years, haven't we?
Yeah.
We turn our back, and he was right. If America turns its back on Israel in any way, why would another ally trust that we're not going to turn their back on them? I thought that was a brilliant take. I had not thought. The other thing is, I had a conversation with a friend who was the president of JINSA. JINSA is an organization, I think it's about 50 years old, and it pairs American bureaucrats with Israeli bureaucrats and takes the top 2 graduates of each military academy and takes them to Israel, and does a lot of bridging that way. They're not related to either party. It's non-political. And he made a really great comment that, again, I had not, before I heard this, really thought about. He said, look, Israel needs America to survive. If America drops its support, Israel could, God forbid, be in the position of we no longer have Israel or we nuke. And they're not going to give up Israel. So, God forbid, it could start nuclear war. Because when Israel goes to war, God forbid, everyone goes to war. Right? Everyone's pulled up in the reserve. Everyone is able. So business shuts down. And as a result, if we're not supporting them financially, there's nothing to come back to. They can't take a protracted battle, protracted war. If they can't afford protracted war, they will, God forbid, do a very quick war. They could make the rest of the Middle East a parking lot tomorrow. But that's not going to help the world either. So America must support Israel on that simple reason as well, to create peace. And yes, they're the only democracy. Yes, we have tight alliances, but simply, if for no other reason, to not step into a worse situation, to a place where, God forbid, nuclear weapons are used. So, I mean, that's why Iron Dome was such an amazing invention, or whatever you would call it, that stops majority rockets from coming in. So Israel is built on a combination of cultural, religious, political values, and nationalism. And because of that, which starts with modern Zionism, Jabotinsky becomes right. He becomes accurate in his predictions of what's going to happen with the Arab world around it. And it becomes a state that is a Jewish state, not just for Jews. Right? So, how many of you heard of the Maccabi Games? Okay, Maccabi Games, third largest sports event on the planet, next to the Olympics and the World Cup. 10,000 Jewish athletes gathered in Israel to compete in all sorts of sports. And I found out they have a junior golf division. So, 17 and under. Next to Maccabi, and my boys will be 16. I'm not hinting. Hey, y'all, if you ever see this video, hey, y'all Tieberger, my friend who's the...
Start saving your pennies.
Yeah. Well, they do scholarship money. It's very, they do, it's really nice program. But the point is that, so you have, I have an old friend who was the coach of the Masters team that won this past Maccabi. So you have, I don't know how I got on Maccabi. I got lost because of golf. It's twin syndrome, sorry. So you have all these people gathering, and it's an amazing, amazing event. Jews are all there, and the rules to be able to participate in Maccabi games are you must be Jewish, anywhere in the world. One exception: if you live in Israel, you don't have to be Jewish. Isn't that interesting? So the Jewish games also include anyone living in Israel, your family too.
Because they're citizens.
Their family. So now. I can't go become a citizen in Qatar. I could move to Qatar. I'm pretty sure they're not going to make me a citizen. I don't know what the laws are in Dubai, but I'll bet there's still that I can't become a citizen. Even though, thank God, they've opened up between Dubai and Tel Aviv. But we become a Jewish state that is not just for Jews, but it is Jewish only, for all Jews, but not just for Jews. And yet we are persecuted throughout the world, and anti-Semitism by the 1980s starts coming out as anti-Israel, because it's still not cool to be an anti-Semite. Now it's cool to be an anti-Semite again. Just ask Rashid Tlaib, right? But then it wasn't. Then it was. So it is. Israel is a unique place, and it all stems from these people, these amazing pioneers. And only, if you think about it, we're now in 2023. We're only talking a little over a century that all this was accomplished. And that they created a society and a culture that has given so much scientifically, technologically, spiritually to so many people. Just remember that when the Arabs were in charge of Jerusalem, Jews could not pray at the wall. We let Arabs go to the mosque. Okay. But how do you resolve the conflict? How do you fix what is a conflict in Israel, which ultimately does stem from theology and stems around a rock? It's a rock. Let's be clear. It's a rock. Okay? It's a rock on which the Holy Temple was built. It's a rock on which the Second Temple was built. It's a rock where the mosque is. Prior to the First Temple, it's also the rock where Jacob dreamed. And it's the rock where Abraham almost sacrificed Isaac. It's the holiest place in Judaism, the third holiest place in Islam. How do you resolve it? The only answer I've ever heard that I could get my arms around, I heard 25, 30 years ago from my friend and teacher, Rabbi Abraham Greenbaum of Azamra. He's one of the heads of the Breslev Hasidim, Jerusalem. He's the founder of the Azamra Institute. was one of the two founders of the Breslov Research Institute. And he said, this is not a war between Jew and Arab, it is a war between good and evil. And there's good and there's evil on both sides. What we do not remember, he said, do not understand, is that this is not a war here. It's a war in the spiritual world. And we are acting it out here. So what can we do? We can birth more angels by praying together and singing together and being together. That births angels in our tradition. So we can birth more angels here, which will then fight the war for good, so it triumphs in the other realms. And then here we will have peace. Because if we look back at what it says in the Tanakh, the future temple will be a place for B'nai Adam, the children of Adam, not just the children of Abraham, not just the children of Jacob, but B'nai Adam, the children of Adam, to pray together to come to the Lord. And everything built by man eventually is gone, either through time, war, choice, or whatever else, right? So eventually, that mosque's not going to be there for whatever reason. But if we birth angels by treating each other in a certain way and with respect and by singing and dancing together, that will create peace here. It's why one of the most interesting concepts that was never manifest, to me, one of the most interesting concepts, was the concept by Rabbi Shlomo Carlebach of blessed memory. I think it was after the Yom Kippur War. It was after 67 or Yom Kippur, I think Yom Kippur. He went and talked to people in the Knesset. He said, you got the best army in the world. You got the best army for war in the world. Oh, I did that again. I'm sorry. You got the best army for war in the world. You need an army for peace. So I want you to let me bring over 100 of my holy hippies. Yes, so you're covering all their expenses. They can come over and we will knock on every Arab door. We'll say, when are you having a party? When are you having a joyous event, a wedding, or whatever it may be? We will come play for you, because the musicians, we will come play for you for free. And then you will have an army for peace. They didn't go for it. And I always wonder, how would our world today in 2023 be different? 50 years ago, the Knesset had said, you know what? That's crazy, just crazy enough. Let's give it a go. As opposed to teaching children hate, teaching them joy through music. So that is sort of our class on Zionism, Israel. Any questions on any of this? Okay, it's kind of, again, we're bouncing all over. Anyone online have any? Mari, was that easier than dealing with this? Otherwise, someone hasn't done any of the triangle breathing. All of a sudden, it's like, hey.
So I guess I do have a question. How does the Messiah factor in?
So,
Or is that
Mashiach.
another lesson?
It's a great question. Messiah is the concept. Why do we not accept Jesus as Messiah? If for no other reason, then we didn't have peace since then. Okay, forget about anything else. And we just discussed about Shabbatai Zvi last week. Miracles mean nothing to us. Okay, you can do a miracle, that's nice. Fabulous for you. Doesn't mean you're Messiah. When the Messiah comes, whether you believe it is a person or a messianic time, in Judaism, the idea is that there will be a world of peace. Jesus didn't fulfill that. Sorry, end of concept, end of report. And the Christian changed the theology, so the idea was, well, the Messiah came, but he's going to come back. Which is why I always say to my friends who are Christians, look, Messiah's going to come, you're going to say welcome back, I'm going to say welcome, we're all going to get along. Because I truly believe that. Messiah will be the leader to help bring that all together as part of the idea. To rebuild the temple and to have a time of peace. There were many, many Orthodox that, and now that this theology has kind of gotten tucked to the side, although it's still very deep, people don't want to talk about it, who were anti-creation of the state of Israel. It's a great quote in the movie Chosen. One of the Orthodox rabbis says, no, Mashiach will bring the temple, will rebuild Israel, not Ben Gurion and his thugs. So that is part of, should have been created as a secular state. But Judaism also deals with what is. So as soon as Israel became a state, it's like, okay, We accept it as here. But that is one of the challenges. It was not created by religious people as a religious state. It's not Iran with an Ayatollah. That's not who we are. It was not created that way. And that's why it's so important to understand this. Mashiach comes, we got nothing to worry about, except those of us who are Kohanim will have to do whatever extra work so our kids can work in the temple. But beyond that, that's where it comes in. Does that help a little bit? So it's because it's not started by the ultra observant aren't going to start it because they believe it's going to happen when Messiah comes, right?
But he may need some help.
That's the argument on the secular side, on the Zionist side, on the non-ultra Orthodox at that time in the early 20th century. So it's Mashiach comes, whether it's a he or she or a time period. The idea that there will be peace. One of our teachings is that there's some beautiful teachings about Messiah. Messiah will come when he is no longer needed. I love that one. This is one of my very favorite ones. If you treat everyone as if they're Messiah, who is only looking for one small act before he will reveal himself, it won't matter if he ever comes. If we all treat each other as if you knew Lois was the Messiah, right? How are you going to treat her? If we all treat each other that way, how beautiful would the world be? Again, I have this dialogue with a friend who's a pastor. So, we've had this dialogue publicly, actually. It's always a repetition of we say the same things to each other. Look, Messiah's going to come. You're going to say, Jesus, welcome back. I'm going to say, welcome. And we're all going to accept him. He goes, yeah, but Rabbi, what if God forbid you die before the Messiah comes? I want you in heaven with me. I said, where's your faith? We say from Maimonides, Anima Amin B'Emunah Shlema. I believe in perfect faith in the coming of this Messiah. And even though he may delay, we believe in perfect faith. I believe in perfect faith that he's coming. And it's one of the principles of faith. And I don't know how many of you have been to a Persian wedding, Persian Jewish wedding.
I hear it very good.
Oh, they're blessed. I love Persian. He's got another one. No, they're great parties. They're great. It's joyous.
They go all night.
It's truly Jewish. I mean, it's truly the essence of Jewish. It's not Protestant. It's not a Protestant wedding with a little Hebrew there. And often you'll hear the band play Anima Amin, Anima Amin, Be'emunah Shlema, B'viat HaMashiach, Ani Amin, Mashiach, 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 Yai, Dai, 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 and they're dancing up and down. It's great. It's fabulous. So that, I don't know if that helps at all, but that's where Messiah comes in to the state of Israel in our belief that, he will come. And again, maybe he'll come when he's no longer needed. Maybe he's come when he's desperately needed. Maybe he'll come when it won't matter because it's an age of peace. And maybe he'll come, as is two traditions, when every Jewish woman has lit Shabbat candles and or every Jewish man has wrapped the tefillin.
I've heard that the Jewish Messiah will come when all Jews return to Israel.
That's more actually a Christian theology than it is a Jewish theology.
Okay. They're trying to get us out of here to go to Israel.
No, it's not that.
Israel's not big enough.
Yeah, it's not that. It's just it's more that that's why it's so important to many Christians that we need to have in Israel, a Jewish homeland. No, look, there's so many different teachings. A lot of the teachings go back to the book, the tractate Sanhedrin and the Talmud, Masechta Sanhedrin, about Messiah stuff. A lot of it's talked about in the Talmudic tractate on Sanhedrin. And for our purposes, we've all chosen, at least for now, to be diaspora Jews living in the diaspora. How do we do it? How do we live as Jews? How do we live in the diaspora? How do we support Israel? And do we know why we support Israel? And do we understand what created the miracle that created the state? I think it's Ben Gurion or Golda Meir who says, if you live in Israel, by definition, you have to believe in miracles. Okay. Mm-hmm. And like we always have, as long as we do what we're supposed to do and live in the right way and have faith in God, God's always taken care of us, hasn't he? We've studied that now throughout this last 7 months, right? And it's only when we abandon God that God says, okay, you know what? You need a gentle reminder about what's really important.
When we were in Israel, it was amazing how upbeat they were. You know, it's like, I mean, they would just always be willing to talk.
Well, that's just Jewish. We're always willing to talk.
We were at that part, remember?
The spirit was something I've never seen before. No matter where you were, if you were there for a bar mitzvah, everybody in the room got up. And not just the bar mitzvah, went to a restaurant and they heard that she was bat mitzvah. Everybody in the room got up and was dancing and singing and celebratory.
So one of the things that if we go back to how Cook brought the secular and the observant together, the secular realized we're all one family. So you're in Israel, you realize, you know what? We're all together in this, and you may be saving my life, or maybe you saved my life in whatever war. So look, the thing that I love that I always thought was one of the great ad campaigns for Israel was in the 70s. You'd see pictures of this all over in Jewish periodicals. You'd see the discotheques, gorgeous Israeli women, gorgeous young Israeli women, and just dancing. And then you see them from the back, and they got an Uzi strapped to their back.
They're all, yeah.
Right? It is. But again, we don't have, at least that we know of, a Rav Kook at this time who can bring all the parties together. We do need that. And maybe that's where Messiah comes in, to bring it together. Maybe that is the Messiah. One of the comments, and I'll leave you with this thought. Yitzhak Rabin was the prime minister of Israel. He was also one of the original freedom fighters. So he's a warrior who became a warrior for peace. And had made the deal with Arafat. And just as a postscript to that, when after Rabin died and Clinton said to Arafat, just give up the Temple Mount. Arafat said, if I give up the Temple Mount today, I will be drinking coffee with Rabin tomorrow. In other words, one of his own people would kill him. But Rabin was a true warrior. Done all those things a soldier did in defense of his nation. And he was shot by a young man who went to an ultra-Orthodox school where he would have been thrown out of school for eating bacon, but could justify shooting the prime minister in his mind. Because the prime minister was going to give up Holy Land that was given to us in the Torah. And where Rabin was shot, he had just come from, this is my understanding, I have not seen it. Hopefully when we take the kids, God willing, this year we will. He had just come from a peace rally for Shalom Achshav, which means peace now. It's a peace movement in Israel. And there he had sung Shir HaShalom, Song of Peace. And he didn't remember the lyrics, so he wrote them down. You know the story, right? You know the story. And so he'd written down the lyrics on an envelope and put it in his chest pocket. Afterwards, after the rally, he put it in his chest pocket. The bullet went through the envelope. The bullet that killed him. That's my understanding. I've not seen it, so I can't verify that, but I've read that. And someone who was a rabbi, I think in Europe, had made the comment of, what if we just killed the Messiah? He was a warrior who was bringing peace. And he had the cojones to do it because he had been one of the original freedom fighters. So I think we need to treat everyone as if they're the Messiah. And it won't matter if they won't, if they're not. But Israel has challenges politically. And now you understand, when you wonder about how are they having time, why are they always, where's this fights coming from? And what? Now I hope this helps a little bit for everyone to understand what has created the circumstances that we are now in 2023.
I had heard, I don't know how accurate that's, that Rabin was willing to give up half of Jerusalem. And then years later, Arafat in his dying bed said, I should have taken the deal, something like that.
I have no idea what Arafat did or didn't say. I don't know. I wouldn't be surprised either way. But he didn't take it down. He didn't make the deal then. I understand that the mount was supposed to be going to Israel. Temple Mount. So I hope that helps a little bit. Next week is, today's the 20th. So next week, then we take a Passover break. I think we finish this series next week. And then we'll take a Passover break. Because we're really in the 20th century now. We're in the 20th and 21st century now. And next week, I think we'll have our last class. Orlando, do you have that butcher paper? You know what I'm talking about, right? Okay. And then we take a break for Pesach, and then we'll start something else between Passover and Shavuot. Traditionally, we study Pirkei Avot in those times. We might have a Talmud class. We might have meditation or mysticism, which I would love to do. And Rabbi Shochet actually gave me these copies, wanted me to teach this. So we have these copies of Abraham Joshua Heschel's last book as well. So that might be a topic either for now or for during the summertime. So you've given me these copies. It's a wonderful, wonderful thing by Heschel. But everything by Heschel is wonderful. So it's no surprise. We have Shabbat services Friday night? No?
No.
We have Shabbat services Saturday morning? And we have it's fun. It's the beginning of the book of Leviticus. So it's actually terrific. It's Vayikra. And then we have next Monday night, we have a Talmud and Tobacco. I want to say we're doing it. The 29th, because of April. April's such a messy month in terms of scheduling because of Passover. And we go out of town for Pesach. And, we're out. And then in May, we have a fundraiser. And I think those are more some of the basic things. So, and that's it. So, is there any other questions, comments, jokes? Oh, I heard a great. What was the joke that Sal sent me? Here's your joke to end the evening. My friend Sal Litvek sent this as the second best he's been doing for all year. The 72 greatest Jewish jokes. I know they don't tell jokes. You'll see why. But there were two guys that were schlepping money. They were beggars in front by the Vatican. You've heard this. I never heard this. I guess this is a very old joke. I never heard it. I couldn't.
I'm older than you.
That's so. Two beggars. One's got a Jewish star. One's got a cross. And their baskets. Have you heard this too?
No.
Okay. And the guy in the cross has got all this money, and the guy in the Jewish basket's only got a couple of coins. So a priest comes out from the Vatican, and he says, "Have you heard this, Orlando?" So a priest comes out from the Vatican, and he looks to the guy with the Jewish star, and he says, "I don't want to get into your business, but maybe you shouldn't be wearing that, and you raise more money." The Jewish star looks at the guy with the cross, and says, "Moishala, can you believe this guy's trying to tell us about marketing?"
That's funny.
I thought I lost it. So on that note, God willing, I'll see you guys on Saturday morning for Shabbat services. Okay, thank you.